Sight reading is something that's fascinated me for a long time, and as you can see behind me, there's quite an array of books that I've done over the years. These are only just some of them as well. Just recently, I've done a book called How to Sight Read, which was really interesting to write, and I spent a lot of time with various kinds of scientists, optometrists, people that understand how the brain works in the sight reading process, to come up with this book. And it really explains the process in a very interesting way. And if you're interested in the process itself, and indeed how to teach it better, this book I think will be of considerable use. In this short presentation, and I could talk about sight reading for hours literally, in this short presentation I just want to talk about two things. One is why it's important, and the other is just a very quick look at how best to use the sight reading series. So let's have a look at the point of sight reading. Why bother to learn to do this activity? Well, obviously, if we can understand that music that we're looking at, we can just learn more music more quickly and more thoroughly. And in fact, teachers don't have to tell us so often, this is how it goes. I want teachers to say that as little as possible, because if we can sight read, we look at the notation and we understand how it goes, which is just so helpful. Wonderfully, it gives us the opportunity to play with others. As soon as we have confidence in our reading ability, we can join an ensemble, we can join a band or a choir or an orchestra or a chamber group with confidence, because we know that we can read the music, we can play with others. And playing with other people is such a lovely thing. In this slightly troubled world of ours at the moment, playing music harmoniously with other people is a wonderful thing to do. It changes the role of teaching and learning and practice. I've already mentioned this in a way already, because we understand the notation, we understand what the music is asking us to do, we can spend more time in lessons, in practice, actually exploring the more musical side of things, finessing what we're doing. If you're doing exams, of course, if you can sight read, you can get more marks, obviously. And it always makes me wonder, the sight reading piece at an exam is maybe 2 grades more simple in its ingredients, in its rhythmical ingredients, in its technical demands, than the pieces that we've just been playing. So why can't we sight read it? Isn't that an interesting thought, really? And if we are able to interact with notation, if we understand the notation, the sight reading piece in the exam really is going to become no problem at all. And this is how I've seen so many candidates when they look at the sight reading piece, and there's no necessity for that, really. Let me just very briefly tell you why that is. There are 3 different bits of our brain, and when we panic, our thinking brain, when we understand what we're doing, our emotional brain, when we're still understanding, and then our reptilian brain. That's the bit that comes into play when we panic. We get a release of cortisol, a chemical, and the blood literally bypasses our thinking and emotional brain. And we're looking at musical notation, for example, but there's no blood going through the thinking brain. We simply don't understand it. We're in reptilian brain, fight or flight. The blood goes to the muscles to allow us to run away, which we can't do in an exam. So we just kind of turn to jelly, really. I don't want that to happen. It doesn't have to happen if we learn to sight read, which we all can do. Absolutely all of us can do so. If we can sight read, if we can read music, it will guarantee the continuation of our great art. We can, all of us, read new music, play music, without someone necessarily saying, this is how it goes. And ultimately, it gives us independence. We can do it on our own. Of course, I've done this big series, and just briefly, how does it work? They're all based on the same principles of, we start off with rhythm. The rhythm exercises, and you really must understand these, it's essential. This is from one of the more advanced books, grade 7. You get the pulse in the rhythmic exercises and then a rhythm on top of that pulse. And if you happen to have my How to Sight Read book, there's a whole chapter on learning to subdivide. And if we can subdivide that pulse kind of instinctively, all rhythms become simple. But I want us to be able to hear that pulse, or maybe beat it with a foot and clap the rhythm, or maybe play that rhythm on a single note. Essential. When it comes to it, 1 or 2 thoughts. Always decide on a good pulse, sense that pulse, hear the rhythm internally before you try to actually clap it or play it. Count in 2 bars, maybe 1 out loud, 1 silently, and do the exercises in different ways, which I've talked about in the each book tells you different ways of doing it. Then we have melodic exercises, which take whatever rhythms we've been working at and puts them into a melodic context. And again, a few thoughts. Check for technical difficulties. You know, if there is something there that's going to be a bit tricky, I don't want you to hesitate. Try to read it and hear it internally before you play it. And when you are fairly certain, or your pupil is fairly certain that you understand it, then you begin. Count in, again, maybe 2 bars. In some of the books, we have an improvisation possibility and a composing possibility as well, taking some of the ingredients and just playing around with them. Then we have a section called prepared pieces, where there are some questions, and the questions are designed to get you to think about what you're looking at. They're designed to encourage you to think about the music, make up more questions of your own. If you're teaching, if you're learning, just think, you know, what else can I think about? Maybe what I call walk the course. Give a running commentary. It begins with this pattern, then we have an arpeggio pattern here, then we have another melodic pattern that's same as the beginning but goes in a different direction. Just want you to walk the course, look through it, and be sure you understand what you're seeing. And then have a go. And you know, expect the dynamics and other markings to be there, because we understand what we're doing. Just expect all that to happen, and you give a musical performance. And then we get what I call going solo, just some pieces at the end of each stage which puts everything we've done together. Look at it, read the music first, feel that you understand it, hear it in your head, and then have a go. And it works, and you'll find that you can sight read. The term sight reading we tend to use to describe the first time that we read something. But really, what we're talking about here is reading music, is seeing notation, assuming that that is the kind of musical life that we are leading, based around notation. It's seeing that notation and really understanding it, and becoming a good sight reader, becoming a good reader. And I like people to, you know, sit in a comfortable chair and just read music from time to time, just to feel what it's like, that we can look at music and we can read it as well as we can read words. To become a really solid, proficient sight reader really makes us into a much more solid and proficient musician in general. It's such an important skill.